Hello there, welcome back to the podcast and great to have you with me again. So, this week, what am I going to be talking about? I'm going to be talking about something that I think is one of the most important subjects in sales that often gets misrepresented. Things happen, it goes badly wrong, and I want to tell you how to fix it today. And it's an issue that if you don't fix and you don't solve and you don't become really clever at putting in place, you're going to waste a lot of time and also, more importantly, lose deals that you could have won. So I'm going to talk about why most discovery calls fail, and I'm also then going to talk you through how I run mine. Because again, sometimes people say to me, "Oh, James, are you involved in sales situations every day?" I run sales conversations every week with prospects that both my business and my outsourcing business growth resourcing are talking to. So I run discovery calls on a regular basis, and I will share you the process of how mine work and how I utilize my time effectively. Because the key to discovery calls is the nature of the word discovery is that you are trying to find out whether the other person and you, or the other company and you, led by a person, is a good fit to work together. And in many cases, often in sales, nearly 50% of the time, maybe 60, 70% of the time, the answer is the people you speak to are not going to be a good fit for what you do and how you do it. And the reality is not all business is going to be potential business, and not all good leads are good leads. There are some people which we talk with and have conversations with that might have a different expectation around pricing and what they value. They might have a different expectation around service and what they look for. So there's a huge number of different reasons as to why discovery calls are just that. They are discovery to find out how the conversation goes, to see if there's an opportunity to build it further and go forward, or maybe not, as the case may be. And they're sometimes called triage calls. They're sometimes called introductory calls, whatever. But the point being is these are calls where you've booked a time and date with another person to have a conversation, and you want to be able to open up that. So I'm going to show you how I run mine as well. And I'm successful in selling. I save a lot of time and win a lot of deals because I'm good at doing those calls. I'm going to show you the method that I take for that. But I'm also going to show you why they also go wrong. And why they go wrong is the first reason why they go wrong in the main is because most people feel like a discovery call is a opportunity to pitch and to go in and tell people about their solution and their service. And the reality is it's not. It's not a chance in that time, in that call, in my opinion, to go in and pitch. There may come a need at the end of the call, maybe, where someone might say to you a bit more about what it is you do. But the focus of that call needs to be around understanding the other person and their situation to decide whether there's a fit or not. And a lot of people go into discovery calls with being, "Oh, this is my chance to go and sell my service." Please, 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 if you're doing that, take a step back. Take a step back. If you are so desperate for business, it's going to come across in the way you are. I've said countless times, desperation is a stinky perfume or aftershave. If you look desperate, you will appear desperate, and it will put prospects off you. So what we want to be able to do is to utilize these calls to really see it as a chance to get two sides to come together to see if there is an opportunity. And what you've got to make sure you're also doing on these calls is being honest with yourself around the type of company and type of person you're talking to. I always say to business owners and sales professionals and people I talk to, you don't want, hot curry customers, I call them. And that's maybe a bit of a, if you're eating your breakfast, the apologies, but hot curry customers they taste okay, but they hurt like hell elsewhere. You don't want those type of customers who are going to create challenges in your business. If you work within a team, your customer services team are going to say to you, "Why did you bring so-and-so in? They're just a pain." So it's about making sure you outline and understand who is the right fit for you in these conversations and these calls. And if you do approach it in a way where you're too pushy, you're going to potentially lose opportunities. I think the other thing that people also try and do is they also are acting too rigid a way. They are too set in their mind around what to do, and it's as if they can't be flexible. And I've said, there's a podcast I did a couple of weeks ago on how adaptability is probably one of the critical skills to have in selling. And if you're not adaptable to adjust to the situation, the scenario, then you're probably going to fail again in more times than you succeed. So I also think discovery calls need to be about asking the right type of questions, but also being able to probe and to dig. One of the other big mistakes that so many people make is they have a series of information they're looking to get to, mainly because they want to sell what they want to, they want to talk about themselves and their offering. And they go too superficial. They go at the top level, but they don't probe down. And if you've watched any of my videos or my content, by the way, if you're not watching any of my videos, I've got a YouTube channel. If you search James White Sales on YouTube, there are 700 videos. All of the podcasts are on there as well, but there are 700 plus videos on how to do anything in sales. And when there's a model on there I call my LAPS model of how to do discovery calls. And you'll see it called Listen, Ask, Probe, Summarize as a really great way to run your calls more effectively. So have a search of James White Sales on my LAPS method, and you'll find it there as well. So look, these are the reasons why they go wrong. And the fourth reason why they also go wrong is because people don't have what I would call a criteria, or the wrong questions to ask to get the criteria of information that they need. Your goal in a first discovery call is a bit like on a first date. The goal is not to propose to that person. The goal is not to be able to say you love them and declare your undying love on a first date. If you did that, most people would say thanks very much and walk away. Your goal is to go, hey, do I like the fit of this person? Is there a good opportunity for us to maybe go on a second date? Your goal of the first date is to get a second date. Obviously, there are other people thinking here other stuff. We're not going there right now on a Wednesday morning. But the goal is to get to a second date. And your goal in a discovery call is to continue the conversation on and to make that other person, the prospect you're talking to, think, yeah, I actually think I'd like to have a conversation with this person again because I feel like they can help me with some issues. They understand me. They feel like they're the sort of person I'd want to work with. Now, obviously, if you can then do business from that point onwards, great. But don't make the mistake of trying to make the discovery call focused on just trying to do business there and then. So here's how I run my discovery call. So there's a couple of people. There's an opportunity that I had with a lady last week, actually, so I do it obviously for my growth resourcing business and my business itself. I did a call with a lady last week. And the first thing that I try and do, and by the way, I've got there's 10 points here that I try and put in place here, and I'll try and create a graphic that you can use for these as well. So the first thing that I can do with a discovery call is, obviously what I will do is I will create a time in the diary for someone to meet, and I will send them an invitation to their email from my email system with a link to the Google Zoom or Google Meet or Teams link that you've got. And I will firstly put in the email subject title a little bit, not just call with James White. I will put call to drive sales growth with James White. So whatever your solution that you fix, put it in the subject line of the meeting when you confirm the meeting. If you're still solving IT headaches for manufacturing directors, solving some IT headaches, or solving or fixing IT problems, or solving a cybersecurity issue, whatever it is that you solve, put that in the subject line, but then put your name, meeting with James White from Growth Resourcing. So what it does is it sets the expectation in the other person's mind that you're going to focus on something that's valuable for them or something that's going to help them. And what you should also do in that meeting is obviously set the time. And by the way, everyone sort of thinks meetings have to be an hour. They don't. Meetings can be 15 minutes. And sometimes putting a 15-minute meeting in the diary for a discovery call is just as valuable as putting a 30-minute one in there. So, if you're going to just have a conversation with someone for 10, 15 minutes, and if you think you can utilize that and you practice at doing it, then 15 minutes is fine. But most people tend to put 30 minutes. I tend to sort of use, especially if it's a new potential prospect, I tend to put 30 minutes in the diary. And the reason I also do that is it's really important if you stick to that time, because it can actually help you if you're having a conversation with someone where you don't think this is going to go anywhere, you don't think there's actually a fit to work together, because it can actually help you to say, hey, thanks very much. As I mentioned, I've got a hard stop at 10:30 in order to move on to my next conversation. And if you actually do think that the conversations go really well and your discussions flow and you haven't got another meeting, then carry it on. But sticking to a time can help you. Although in general, I will always try and stick to the time, because again, I like to show the prospects I'm working with that I'm busy and I've got other stuff going on and my time's just not for them to take up whenever they want. So stick to a time firstly when you have when you engage. So point number 2 is this. And when I had the conversation with the person I did last week, my first goal is to try and build a connection. So what I'm doing is I will always look at their LinkedIn profile, their social media profile before I get onto the call, have a little look at their background, and have a little look at who they are. And I will try and build a connection. And one of the videos and podcasts I've done is around the 4 different types of people. There are 4 different types of people. There are reds, dominants, yellows, influencers. There are greens that are steadiness, and blues that are conscientious. And what I will do is in that first conversation, I will assess, and one of my skills, and I can teach you to do this if you want, is to assess people quite quickly as to their style. So, for example, if I go on a call, the person I was speaking to the other day was quite chatty initially. She was quite engaging. She was quite friendly. So she wasn't what I would see as being a blue stroke, a conscientious person. She was more yellowy green. She definitely was a relationship-based person. So when I'm in conversation with someone like that, then I can build a connection. And I will have a list of questions such as, have you had a good morning so far? Or if I'm speaking to them on a Monday, did you have a lovely weekend? Or I might say to them, if they're on a weekend, on Friday, I might say, have you got good plans for the weekend? And I might even, sometimes it's a very British thing to do. I might even talk about some other stuff like, it's terrible weather outside or whatever. So I'm trying to just build that connection. But my tonality when I do that is about being friendly and engaging and sort of person they want to talk to. And, I'll talk about in a moment about how you can assess people. But what I'll try and do is build that connection. And then the third point that I'll always do at the start of a meeting is to be in a position where I will potentially go the other way. So what I will do is I will always say to someone, look, it's really great to have a conversation with you today. Really looking forward to chatting. Look, and my goal today is to try and provide some ideas and help and get to know a bit more about you and your situation. And if at the end of that conversation, I can't help, or I don't think we're a good option, then hey, we can leave it there. There's no problems. So what I'm trying to do at that early point is to sort of defuse the bomb, as I call it. I'm trying to make that person feel like they don't mind sharing information with me because of the fact they don't think I'm just going to sell to them. When people feel like they're going to be sold to, their barriers go up. They go, I don't want to engage in this respect. So I really want to try and sort of go the other way. And what I will always do is ask early on in the session, and sometimes the conversation flows so quickly you can forget to do this, but I will always ask early what they want to gain from the conversation and then probe a bit more into that. So I will always say, look, really great to chat to you. We've got half hour for the call today. What would make it a useful, valuable, use of your time? And what would be the useful things you'd love to cover or go through that could help you or could enable you to make some plans or to learn more about, what we did, or I might say, and I try not to use the word why, what was it, that made you want to come together and have a conversation? And so what I'll try and do is when they then say, I was looking to find out a bit more about your service and what you do, or I was looking to, get some help in this area. What I'll then do is I'll probe. All right, so tell me a bit more. You mentioned that the person I spoke to today said that, she'd hired some salespeople. The salespeople weren't, in the past, weren't generating results, and she'd gone through a few people. So she was looking to try and drive growth in her business, but wasn't sure how she could do that if she didn't have resource. And I started to then dive into those areas, which I'll talk about in a moment. But be in a position where you can assess that person, the nature of the conversation, the way they are. Really be in a position where you ask what they're looking for and be prepared to go the other way. So, like I mentioned, just be in a position where you can say, "Look, really great to have a chat." Frame the conversation. If we're going to have a chat for half hour, if it turns out that I'm not a good fit, if it turns out I can't help you, if it turns out that what you're looking for A and we offer B. I totally get that. And look, it's been nice to meet you and we've not lost anything by a little bit of time. So I really want to assess, and I also want to, again, ask that question. Really good to have some time with you. What would you like to cover in the next 30 minutes that would make it really useful for you? And then probe into the information that they come back. And when you start to do those things and then start to really listen into what that person is saying and listen into the tonality they give and the information they share, it's a sales superpower. It really is. Like the lady that I was speaking to the other day, she was able to say, well, yeah, I was a bit frustrated. And she was talking me through some stuff. And I was like, okay, she's telling me everything, because this person is a yellow, because I'm able to assess the fact that I think she's a relationship-based person. I was just asking her, what was the implications of that and how did that work and how did that make you feel and what did that do for you? And she just kept on sharing information. So as a result of that, at the end of that call, I would guess I was probably speaking for 25% of the time, maybe 20% of the time, and she had talked for 80%. So it was about her and her challenges and her issues. And so one of the things that, again, I think you need to do as part of that process is to, once you've asked those questions and start probing, resist the urge to solve. one of the things that I think a lot of salespeople do is they hear something go wrong and they go, oh, that's a chance for me to go in and say, oh, my company does this, this and this. And it's a bit like, if you're going on a date with someone, I always talk about how sales is like dating. If you're going on a date with someone and they said, oh yeah, I had a, bad experience, of dating in the past, you wouldn't go to, oh, well, that's okay. Well, I'm a great date. You'd hopefully be a bit empathetic and say, oh, well, what happened? And tell me what went on. And, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And you'd be, show a bit of empathy in your engagement. So I think sometimes people don't want you to solve stuff for them straight away. They just want you to listen and hear them out. And when you hear people, when you listen to people, you actually start to listen to really what they're saying to you. Because if you start to listen to tonality and the way, if it's on if you can hear them if you can see them on a face-to-face Zoom call or Teams call, you can see expressions and gestures that make someone really indicate the frustration. So again, the person that I was talking to, the way she explained, she explained something to me was like, I'm really frustrated at that. And her tonality was really key. And her facial gestures sort of like, it was like an angst air. So I was able to see that that wasn't just words, it was her tone and her language and her body gestures gave it away that this was an area that really frustrated her. So what I was able then to do is to say, right, I know that's a challenge for someone. And when I'm then going back in the future and I probed a bit more around it, I asked a few more questions around what challenges that had created and issues that had caused. But when you're able to probe a bit further in those areas, other stuff starts to happen. You're able to then really find out, especially when it comes down to the issue of in time around your solution, you can go back and say, well, when we spoke, you were really frustrated about this issue. How are you going to get that resolved if you don't do something? So resist the urge to solve. Try and listen. Try and focus on not talking. My dad in sales, one of my inspirations from a sales perspective as a sales director, you got 2 ears, 1 mouth, use them in proportion. Your discovery calls are to discover things. If you speak, you talk, stuff. You're not going to discover anything. No one discovers something by just doing things they already do right now. It's about taking that next step to find out what's going on and use the discovery call to discover things, not to know what you already know. So resist the urge to solve, but what you must do, and again, I've got some resources that I can share with you on my website. If you ever, there's lots of resources. If you go to www.jameswhite.business or search for James White Sales, you'll find my website. I've got lots of resources on there. Have a list of questions that are good for you to engage and ask on there. And there's a download I've got called 52 Sales Questions to Ask, which is a really good one for you to have a look at. But also have a little think about your own criteria. So there's a podcast, I think I've done a podcast link which we'll share around your own sales criteria. So in other words, if you go back to my date analogy, you don't go on a date and go, I'm going to go from 18 to 80. You'll go and say, oh, I'm going to, looking to meet someone from the age of 30 to 50 or 30 to 40, that likes sport, that likes the theatre, that likes going out, likes pizza, whatever. I don't know. You'll have a criteria, and sales is the same. If we go out and say, try and find everyone, we're going to fail more often than we succeed. The best 1% of salespeople know who their audience is and are able to engage with that audience. So have a list of questions that you can ask, but make sure you link those to your sales criteria. And there's a video I've got on my YouTube channel around sales criteria and sales qualification. Watch it. It's definitely a thing that will help you. So once you start asking those questions, you can then start, as I say, to really start spotting the signals and respond to what that person's saying. And I think you've got to really be in a position where you pick up on some of those elements and pick up on that tonality change or their frustration or their gestures on what they're giving you. So look, the final 2 points of what I do in that call, bear in mind I'm having questions and conversations. And sometimes if you're engaging with a blue person, an engineer, sometimes or an accountant or CFO, it's really important you have those questions because those conversations can be really, really closed, and especially if you ask closed questions. So one of the other key thing around asking questions is to ask lots of open questions. The what, the how, the where, the who, the show me, tell me, talk me through. Those are the questions you should be asking, not do you have an issue in this area? If you're talking to a blue or conscientious person, they'll probably say, yes, I do. And then it's like, suddenly, it feels awkward. Talk me through the problems that you've got in this area and what you're doing to fix them. Well, we're trying to do some stuff to do this, and this, but it's not working. You mentioned it's not working. What's happening? Tell me more. So what you're trying to do is show you that empathy and that engagement that then gets that person to feel like they can trust you and want to share things with you, and look for the signals and signs that they're giving. Especially again, even, blues and those people that are a bit more reserved will give certain signals or will do certain gestures where they'll, for example, I've been on a call with a CEO who was a blue, And they started rubbing their eyes and their face when they were talking about an issue, even though they were quite quiet in the way they were saying it. Now, I know, again, I've got a video on my YouTube channel around how, certain body signals you can see. I know when someone's doing that, it's a sign that there's a frustration for them. So I was able to sort of really pick up on that and then respond accordingly. So look for those signals. Don't just hope it will be okay. One of the things a lot of people do in discovery calls is they hear what they want to hear. They have happy ears. They hear what they want to hear. And then, because they've not probed in much detail, they think, oh, the person said they had a problem. But did they really mean they have a problem? Or was that, it was an issue, but it wasn't the biggest issue they had. There are other things that are more pressing and more challenging for them that they're going to focus their time on, but you didn't probe to get into those areas. So just spot the signals. And I'm not going to cover that all on a podcast. I might cover that up in a separate podcast, but it's a critical thing for you to do. So I did mention a minute ago about, final 2 points. I did mention a minute ago about don't try and resist the urge to solve. But what I try and do within my calls is I will always tease a little bit about what we can offer and who I've done that with before. So again, on the call that I had on last Monday, I was in a position to say to this person, yeah, look, totally understand. I see the frustration you've got there. Look, we can pick this up another time, but we had an organisation very similar to you, had the same issue. We were able to take that pain away from them. And they're now driving great opportunities. So within 10, 15 seconds, I teased it. I teased what we could do and how we could help and said that that's something we can then pick up at another stage, another time. So don't try and pitch it, as I said before, don't try and pitch at this stage. I think if you're pitching at this stage, you're going to lose more often than you're going to win. There are some people, the reds, the dominants, do want information quite quickly and do want you to pitch, but most people don't want that. They want to be able to hear that they've been listened to and engaged. Or if you get someone that says, oh, who was that company? Who was that person? And tell me more. I've got a bit of time. I'd like to understand that. Then you can talk a little bit more. Great. Well, I can share lots of information about that company or that solution. What would be useful for you to cover? What would be useful to cover? So just try and sort of tease what you can offer and make that person want the next meeting. Again, a lot of discovery calls don't go anywhere to the next meeting because your person's heard everything. They know everything. Your pricing. It's like, well, why do I need to have another conversation? Do I think that thing's worth valuable? No, I don't. There's no point carrying it on. You want to tease that details out. And sometimes I get asked questions around pricing, and should on a discovery call you go through pricing? And so one of the things I will say to people is this. If you're building great rapport with people and you're talking things, ask the questions around what matters to them, what's critical. Yeah, have this list of questions of, what's key to you when you're looking to solve a solution, an issue like this. How have you invested in these type of areas in the past? What you want to try and do is get a sense of how they approach these type of issues. Is money not an issue and it's about fixing the issue, or actually they've got to do it in the most cost-effective way possible? I've been on some sales calls where, again, from a growth resourcing perspective, where I talked to a guy, I remember, at the end of last year, and he was like, I just want the cheapest option possible. And automatically, because that didn't work for us and our solution in our criteria, I was able to say, look, at the end of it, I could then end with the next step, which was, I don't think we're going to be the right people to help you because you're looking for A and we're looking for B. So if you do get asked information about pricing, try and sort of qualify it down a little bit. Try and find out what it is that they're looking for. What makes price so key for you? Talk me through how you've made investments in this. And if they say, I just want a price from you, then I would always give the range pricing. Look, typically it can range from this to this, depending on your situation and what you're looking for. But let's cover that off in at the end or in another call if we think there's a good fit to work together. So again, I always don't, I'm not sycophantic. I'm not someone that, oh, can I work with you? Can I work with you? I'm always a bit like, is this a good fit for me? Mainly because, as I said before, if you're too desperate, people feel they can take advantage of you. Whereas if you go a bit like, hey, I'll see if it's a good fit for me, people go, oh, well, I want to work with that person. Why don't they want to work with me? And a lot of customers or prospects think that the other salesperson's got to be bowing down at our table and, in that way. Well, actually, we can say, well, no, that may not be a good fit for us. It makes them actually want you more. And if it's done in the right way, it can't be done arrogantly, but if it's done in the right way. So then the final point really is to end with some clarity. So at the end of the call, I said, look, I really enjoyed our conversation today. It's great to chat to you. It looks like you've got a few issues in a few different areas over here, and there's a few things I can help with. Why don't I suggest this? Why don't I send you some further information? But what I'd like to do is present or share that information with you on a call. So why don't we come together, say at the end of next week, next Thursday or tomorrow, or if you know that they're a blue or a green, then they're going to need a bit more time. If they're a red or yellow, they might make decisions quicker. But, let's put a date in the diary for 3 days time, 4 days time, a week's time, and get that booked in, get that clarity. and then ensure you outline what you're going to do by when. So, say I'm going to, what I'll do is I'll summarize our conversation today. I'll send that through to you by the end of today or by the end of tomorrow. And then let's look to catch up and put a date in the diary for that conversation in X period of time. Now, if that person doesn't want to give you that commitment, then it should give you a warning signal that the call has not gone as well as you would have hoped or thought. So it should send a warning signal to you that they basically didn't think it was worth their time to carry on that conversation. And that's the reality. If you don't like that, that's hard to hear, I know, but it's the reality. So bear in mind that, but end with clarity. And if the end of the conversation is from your discussion with them and if you've got that criteria created that you think there's not a good fit here, you're better off to say, look, from what you said here, I'm not sure we're a good fit. You're looking for this and we do this, and I don't want to waste your time and my time. And what I'll do is I'll send you an email with a couple of other ideas. And if you think things have changed from your side, then let me know. So it's okay to, at the end of a call, say to someone, I'm not sure if there's a good fit here to do something with. It may well be that this isn't the right fit for us. So look, that's how I run my discovery calls. That's how I run it. And I'm successful with them. They work. I build relationships in the right way and do what's needed. And look, it's what works for that. I use it as a discovery call, not a pitching call. And I think that's one of the things that people fail and don't do that causes them challenges. So, but anyway, look, I hope that's helpful. And if it is, let me know. Let me know how you run your calls. Is this some area you're struggling with? I do some training in this area. So if you think as a team, this is something you and your team could benefit from, I run training sessions on how to run discovery calls. I did a session with an insurance company the other day and I had some fantastic feedback that two of the guys have hit their targets as a result of having better conversations with the leads that they're generating. So, look, really happy to help you if I can with that. But lots of resources on my website for those things as well. So, well, as I always do, I finish the podcast on an inspirational story. So I just wanted to finish the story on a guy called Albert Lexie. And Albert was a shoe shiner in a hospital in America. And over his 30-year career, he basically generated $200,000 of tips. And most people would happily just take that money and just put it into what they needed and fund themselves and what they're doing. But Albert donated all of his children's tips into a care fund for the hospital. And the reason I share that as a really powerful story is sometimes, the impact we have on other people is not always immediate, but it can be immediate and, be a result of, work over a period of time. So I think Albert Lexie's story of being able to save up all his tips, even though he wasn't a big earner himself, to help others, I just think is inspirational and makes us think, actually, there's something you can do today and tomorrow that can help someone in the future. Then focus on that. Well, look, that's it for this week on the podcast. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please tell others about it and like and subscribe and share it on public social medias. We're trying to grow and help as many people as possible get sales results. And I hope this is helping you give more access and support on your discovery calls. If you do have other questions, please reach out to me. Reach out. You can search me on James White on LinkedIn or any of my social channels. If you've got questions, if you've got things that you think I wasn't covered in enough detail, tell me. Hey, I'm using these podcasts to cover the things that are important to you. So that's it for this week. Hope you enjoyed. As ever, thanks so much for your ears and your eyes if you're watching online. And I'll see you really soon next week, in fact, for another episode and go from there. Take care. Bye-bye.